What's up, everybody? Arael Avinu here with Fully Deconverted. And today I have a guest that I'm very much looking forward to. And I know because of his subject matter expertise that if you're watching this, you're definitely in for a treat. And it's going to be something that you want to hear as well and probably share with a lot of your friends. But before we get to him, I want to shoot over here and let everybody know what we got going on for the rest of this week. Tomorrow we have Cyrus the Skeptic and then Sally Hunt. I think that's this week. And then next week, if you guys want to see who else we got on, head over to fullydeconverted.com. Check out our events, upcoming events. You can scroll through for the whole month of August to see what we got. We're already booking through September. And if you don't see somebody you want to hear content from, make sure to send a message to fullydeconverted.com or find us on the socials, which are also plugged up there. And we'll try to get that person on. Now to our guest today, which is Phil Ferguson. He's an atheist, and he has subject matter expertise in economics, politics, etc. And he's the host of the Phil Ferguson Show. Phil, the atheist movement and your financial expertise, how do those two come into the same conversation? And why are they ever relevant? How do we get atheism
Absolutely.
and your financial expertise in the same conversation?
Well, I was scared there for a minute that you were going to announce you're doing something every day. I get nuts on me. I struggled to do this once a week, and it's audio only, so I had to
Oh yeah,
learn new technology to make this video magic work.
yeah. Last week we had 3. We had 4 scheduled, but yeah, sometimes we go through it.
Wow, that's fantastic. How I got involved, probably about 10, 11, maybe 12 years ago now, when I had a nice job, and I've been very fortunate to have a 6-figure plus job working for the man.
Yeah.
I would donate money to the cause, to conferences, sometimes large conferences, national conferences, sometimes small, local, regional conferences.
Mhm.
And one of the conferences said, "Hey, do you want a table to promote your business?" Because not only did I have a day job, but I also had my own business that I've had for a long time. And I'm one of those people that I don't sit still very well. So the idea of sitting and watching, for example, a 3-hour football or baseball game, I don't even know how people do that. I can't. Just watching TV, I can't. So I've got to be doing something. So for me, working 60, 70 hours a week doesn't seem like that much, because that's what I do. I work.
Yeah.
And started donating money to these conferences, and they said, "Have a table." And my first, I'm assuming I can swear on the show.
Yeah.
Okay. My response was, "What in the fuck does a finance guy do with a table at an atheist convention? That doesn't make any sense."
Yeah.
And because I was going to so many conferences every year, 4, 5, 6, 8, and I know a lot of the presenters, and I've heard their talks, and sometimes presenters repeat a talk a couple of times, or they have similar content.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I'll sit up at my little table and I'll put out a few cards and a couple pamphlets that I had made and talk to people, and had a great time. So again, going with this idea that I can't sit still, me sitting in a conference in a dark room for 8 hours continuously, I just fall asleep. I can't, I got it. Even when I love the presentation. I mean, if it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm good. I'll stay awake for him, but
Yeah.
a lot of presenters, it's not my thing. And after doing that for a year and a half, 4 or 5 different times, several different conventions, someone came up and said, "So you're a financial advisor?" And I said, "Yeah, that's kind of the gist of this table." And he says, "Well, I've got a financial advisor already, and I don't like them. And you're supporting atheist causes. Can I hire you?"
Oh yeah. Wow.
And I thought, well, sure. I never thought I'd actually get any business out of this. I was just doing it to entertain myself. And so I got a client, and then another, and then another, and then 2, and then 4, and then 6. So my business started growing, and it grew, and it kept growing to the point where I was having trouble doing my day job and my business, because I was starting to run out of hours in the day.
Yeah.
And thankfully, about 5 years ago, my employer did me a favor, and they pulled me into a little conference room and handed me a box. Said, "Get your shit and get the fuck out." Those weren't the words they use. That's the words I use. But
Yeah.
that was the gist. And it's one of those things that I, for the life of me, can't figure out why my job was eliminated, why I was the one to go that day. And I'm sure they have their reasons. And part of me would like to ask, just say, hey, look, I've signed something. I promise I won't sue you. I won't hold it against you. But God, I'd freaking love to know what was. But then part of me is like, I don't think any answer is actually going to be good enough because we all live in our own little heads thinking that we're wonderful and there would be no good reason to let me go.
Right. Yeah.
But I suddenly had all this free time. So I spent more time and effort on my podcast, and I started going to even more conferences. And I think my peak year, I went to 14 atheist, skeptical, free thought conferences. And it turned out that the growth wasn't linear. As I went to more shows, it was kind of exponential.
Growth where?
With my business, the number of people that would hire me. So
nice.
Me once a year, they go, that's curious, this guy's here. But someone who'd see me 3 or 4 times a year. And I would have a couple who's maybe in their 60s, and they would see me at 4 conferences within a calendar year. Now, first of all, they have the money and the resources to go to 4 conferences.
Right. Yeah.
Often a hotel, airfare for 2, the conference admissions, all these things. So they're doing okay, probably, if you can afford to take a couple people to 4 different conferences, different parts of the country at your whim. And the more they saw me, the more likely they were to sit and talk and go, I keep seeing you at all these things. What's your deal? So that's kind of how they tied. And then, of course, with the podcasting, the more of an evangelical atheist I become, and the more money I make. So it's a weird thing because no other financial planner in their right freaking mind would market to atheists, because a lot of financial planners are local. And so they're in their community. And if they marketed to atheists specifically, they would be terrified that they're going to lose some of their clients. Well, my client base had been growing from the movement for years. And so now that's just where I am. I'm the biggest fish in this little pond.
Well, it's okay. So you've tapped into a niche. Good. Number 1, by the way. 2, I know what it's like to travel and spend money. So when you find somebody consistently traveling, like if it's on their own dime, especially, it's usually a good indicator they've got their nest egg cut out for that sort of thing. I think every time I traveled to do a documentary, I spent no less of my $2,000 of my personal finances. And when you get used to traveling like that, you don't go for the low hotels and the low, like all the smallest forms of travel, because that beats you up way too much. So you're meeting all those people at those. Yeah. So that's okay. So that's cool. So you were going to these conferences. You were just having a ball, giving some people some financial advice, and then it turns out people need financial advice. Imagine.
Some people need financial advice, and this is one of the things that I do that's very different. On my podcast, The Phil Ferguson Show, I instruct people, or I guess information, educational information, maybe entertaining, but it's mostly an educational show. I give people the tools that they need to manage their own portfolio, and it's all for free. And 5,000 to 10,000 people listen a week, and most of them take that information and they benefit from it. And I'm happy I can help in that way. A small percentage of those people will call me and say, I would like to talk to you about possibly hiring you. And part of my brain still says, why in the fuck would you want to do that? I just told you how to do it all for free. But they have other things to do.
Yeah.
It reminds me years and years ago, because I've been doing this about 23 years. I was in my 2nd or 3rd year doing this, and I was freaked out then that people would hire me. It makes more sense now of 20-something years of experience. There's that air that I know what I'm doing. But I was talking to a friend of mine as he was working on my car, and he says, Phil, why don't you fix your own car? And I go, I really don't know how to. And he goes, well, you're not an idiot, are you? And I go, no. And he goes, there's books, man. You can buy a book and read how to fix this radiator in your car. And there's all the diagrams and the parts that you're going to need. And I go, well, okay, I don't have the tools. And he goes, you can borrow my tools. I'll lend them to you for free. So I don't have a place I could work on the car. He goes, you can use my garage. I've got a spare garage. You can come over here and work on your car anytime you want. So, okay, you know what, fucker? I just don't want to work on my car. And he goes, there you go. There you go. It's no different. Some people just aren't interested in the physical labor of working on a car. Yeah. Some people are not interested in doing their yard work, which I actually kind of like. And some people, it's just not in their DNA to work on their money. And a little extra advice and a little extra guidance and not doing anything incredibly stupid mistakes on your own easily covers what you pay an advisor if they do the right thing for you. And it creates a win-win situation. They end up with more money per year. I end up with more money per year. So it's kind of magic.
Yeah, I totally get that. I totally get the need for a financial advisor. I feel or find that I need like help in almost every aspect of my life, because let's say you're a person with a strong vision and you got to move forward, you realize the hours in the day start running out, right? Just like what you said before. I got a question already over in the live feed that I want to share with you. What was it like being on the Atheist Experience with Tracy Harris, and what was the main thrust of the questions? And then we'll go with
Tracy Harris was a little bit over a year ago. Recently, I was on with Russell a couple months ago. And Tracy Harris, so what Tracy and I decided to do is, before I went on the show, and I've known Tracy for 5, 6, 7 years. The day before, or the Saturday, her and I spent a good part of the day together, went to a museum, to a park, and talked about the things that we would talk about, with the intent of making sure that we knew more about each other, and it didn't seem strained and stressed that just two random people show up on the show.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a very good idea on her part. And plus, she showed me around Austin, which I love, except for the heat. God damn it. Anything over 80, I can't take. And it's like that 10 months of the year there. Yeah. But when we went on the show, the funny thing is, the only thing I said that I would have real heartburn with is if someone brings up the Kalam cosmological argument. And the first caller was a crank caller. And then the second caller, I assume they're serious, because sometimes I can't tell with Christianity. I can't tell when someone really seriously, truly believes this stuff, or they're making the shit up, because it seems so comically ridiculous to me. And they wanted to do the Kalam cosmological argument.
And what is that?
Yeah. Imagine, I'll do these wrong because I don't really give a shit about these arguments. But one of the ones that imagine the, I don't even remember. I just know the name. And some of the listeners are going to be freaking out and screaming at the thing because they're into philosophy and debates and arguments. Yeah. But I'm trying to think. Maybe it's the one that goes, imagine the greatest thing that you could ever imagine, the most powerful being. Yeah. That kind of thing. And I said, I don't do arguments. And the guy on the phone was like, wait a minute, this show is about arguments. And I go, well, this show is about evidence. So if you have evidence, present that. And he goes, I'm trying to present that with the argument. And I go, I don't consider arguments evidence. I consider arguments to be verbal masturbation. Yeah. Which then other hosts started using on the show, which was very flattering. And the guy said, arguments are evidence. And I go, okay, well, prove to me that arguments are evidence. And he goes, okay, I have an argument for that. And I go, but I just said it's not evidence. So you're stuck, right? So then I said, okay, fine. Let's assume that I accept the Kalam cosmological argument. And the end result of that is that there is a deity. Maybe that deist kind of deity that never does anything other than starting the universe. That's right. Kind of like a first cause argument. That's, and the guy goes, okay, so I've converted you. And I go, for the sake of the argument, because I won't have the debate with you, I accept that there is some supernatural entity that created the universe. Now what? And the guy goes, okay, so the first step is that there has to be a first cause. And I go, no, I'm not doing the argument. You already won. There's a deity. Now what? How does it represent and show itself in the real world? And the guy was so flabbergasted because he never won the argument before. So
he's never got that far.
Yeah, he never got that far. It's like one of the tricks I've done when I talk to people about evolution, and they claim, what is it? Intelligent design. Yeah. And I'll say, okay, let's pretend for a moment intelligent design happened, and that somebody, something, alien, God, whatever, created everything intelligently. What do we do with that? And I go, what? I go, how do we use that to make our lives better? How do we use that to solve disease? How do we do that to do medicine? How do we use that to figure out how to create a bacteria that can eat oil spills? How do we use intelligent design to actually benefit us any way in the world? And again, they never got that far.
Yeah.
And so my point is, even if you're right, and you're not, but even if you're right, it's useless information. Yeah. Yay. The only time they can actually come up with anything is when they retroactively apply reality back to the Bible. It's just like when they say that things in the Old Testament predicted, what's the right word? The magical spell when people can say prophecy. Wow,
Yeah.
use my words today. The Old Testament prophesies things that are going to happen in the New Testament. And so they can point to something that happened in the New Testament. And my first question, of course, you realize these are stories, right? I mean, this is not like a literal history book or a video recording of an event that happened. But okay, let's assume there's something to the New Testament. Did the people that wrote the New Testament have access to the Old Testament? Could I read all of the Batman comic books and write a story about Batman that fulfilled claims of what Batman would have done in older comic books? Well, it's trivially easy. Right. That's not foreshadowing. I mean, that's not magic. That's not prophecy. That's me looking at the old texts and incorporating them into my work.
Right. Adding to the story.
Adding to the story. It's fan fiction. That's what the Bible is. It's the ultimate fucking fan fiction.
Yeah.
It's just fan fiction.
Well, speaking of fan fiction, deities that are actually personal, prophecy, and things that we should expect a return on. What are the going over into finances? Because some people who view this video are going to think immediately about tithing their money, and that is a great way to invest in either one, your future as a human, or two, your future as an eternal servant of God.
Well, one of the things I saw, and I can't remember where, and someone's going to criticize me for not having a link, but you'll have to look it up yourself. If you look at the Americans that give the highest tithing rate, the highest percentage of their income, the poor, the lower their income, the higher the rate of tithing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an indication that doesn't work.
Yeah. It's also an indication of the type of person that will give. Okay, so you're using that as an indicator. Hey, this doesn't work. I often use that in my background to look at the type of person that gives. So we don't see a result, and we only see predominantly a type of person that gives. And as you might be looking at the financial results here, I tend to look at things a little bit more from the psychology or what we observe sociologically. You have any opinions about that, what it tells about the person?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And it's the same thing with lottery tickets. It's kind of the same wish fulfillment.
It's kind of the same thing.
Because if you make really good money, you can see a path to retirement. You can see and do the calculation that if you save X amount per year and you make X amount return per year, in 20, 30, 40 years, you can retire and have more money. And you have the education that goes with that and how to do that. When you're working like a dog, scraping by and can't pay your bills and struggling, and you finally come up with $5, you buy $5 in lottery tickets. Because you're not because you're stupid, maybe uneducated, but you know $5 is not going to get me to retirement. I mean, I could save all the $5 in the world, and I'm never going to be able to retire on $5 at a time. But if I win that lottery ticket, that's going to change everything. And it's the same thing with the church, is that I'm never going to be able to save enough to retire. But if I give something to my big sky daddy friend, he might do me a steady. He might help me out a little bit and send me a random check that can help me pay my car payment. So I think that's the sociology you're probably thinking about.
Yeah, that is. You've tapped right into it. So, Phil, do I understand correctly that as a subject matter expert on finances, that is not your leading strategy with your clients?
Lotteries or religion? No, that's a very bad investment. It's one of those things that I thought if I ever lost my moral compass, I would start a religion, because that's the way to make money, man. These guys that have these hundreds of millions of dollars of income. Joel Osteen in Texas. Are you kidding me? What does that guy do? He goes up and he gives talks to really big crowds and tells them how awesome they are and how the more money they give him, the better off they are going to be. Well, the one thing he's got right, the more money they give him, the better off he's going to be.
Yeah.
When Jesus talks about the rich man getting into heaven is like a camel going through the eye of a needle. And we can have arguments about what that really means, but it sure as hell didn't mean you should be driving around in a gold-plated car.
Right.
So it's just comical how people twist the Bible. I mean, just look at the method of salvation. Some people believe it's random and predestined, like Calvinism. Some people think that it's done by your efforts or works. And some think it's done by the grace and the blood of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Well, which one is it? They can't all be correct. So even Christianity can't agree. And the problem is that as long as Christians just have this nebulous, I'm a Christian, you're a Christian, when you like to be a Christian too, it's all okay. But if you want to see a real argument, get a couple Christians sitting around a table and really get into the details, and they'll argue about every freaking thing. They don't agree on anything. It's a very interesting thing, but yet they all kind of think they're Christians, and this is a Christian, America is a Christian nation.
Right. All right. So let's switch strategies then. Let's go from tithing our money to our imaginary friend.
Yes.
The one that we absolutely trust is there. I mean, certainly. Let's go from that strategy to the Phil Ferguson strategy. What are 3 things that our audience members right now could do to improve their investment strategy for their future or their finances?
3 things. One, you probably got to save more money than you currently are. One of the things that I said accidentally probably 5 years ago on one of my shows is the industry standard, or what the books will tell you, is save 10%. On my show, I call 10% the suck ass minimum. So if you're 22 and you save 10% every year without fail, and then you want to retire at 62 or 65, that might actually work. 10%, if you have enough time, it'll probably work. But most people don't save when they're 22 or 28 or 32. They might mean to, but some do, but it's a rare person that saves before they're 30. So you need to save something closer to 20%. And that's a big surprise to a lot of people. And there's programs out there, or if someone wants to contact me, then just FYI, the email is phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And we can talk in general details, or general information about their situation, how much they have, how many years they want to retire. But I also know that even 20%, if someone calls me at their 55 and they want to retire at 62, and they said, I just finished paying college for my 3rd kid, paid the whole 100%. All 3 of my kids have graduated college debt-free. I'm 55. Now I want to start saving for retirement. I want to be able to retire at 62. And one of the things I'll ask them, I go, what do you think of the power of prayer?
Because you're going to need it.
You're going to need it. I don't know what to do for you. I mean, if you're going to retire in 7 years, even if you save 100% of what you make, it's not going to be big enough. So that's a problem. It takes time. So first thing, save more. If you're already doing that, the second thing is get knowledge about how to invest. This is something that people will spend an incredible amount of time researching their next smartphone. Do I want the Samsung? Do I want the LG? Do I want the next iPhone? Hours and hours of research. Not everybody. Some people just buy the next one. But people spend research on this, and it only affects the device they're going to use for the next year or two. But something that might affect you for the next 30, 40, 50 years, they don't know anything about it. And again, some of the people that hire me, and I'm very thankful, don't want to know anything about it.
Right.
But the listeners learn about it. I've got 3 books if I can give out some recommendations here.
Yeah.
The first book is The Richest Man in Babylon. I think it was written in the early 1900s. It's out of copyright. So the book is published by a lot of people. It's like $4, $4 or $5. You can even get it on YouTube viewers, for free, where someone just reads the book because it's out of copyright. So it's free. Because it's a 100-year-old book, it has some issues. It's sexist. It's a little racist. Kind of work through that, knowing what you're getting into, and just learn about why you should save money, how money builds, and hopefully it kind of inspires and motivates you to go, wow, this can be done. I could do this. That book also does talk about saving 10%. Again, we talked about that. So the first book is The Richest Man in Babylon. The second book is A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And I think this originally came out in the late 60s or early 70s. And it's revised every 4 or 5 or 8 years. So make sure you get a version that's within the last decade. A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And that goes through, this is a bond, this is a stock, this is a mutual fund. So you get the foundation of how everything works. The third book is Common Sense on Mutual Funds, and it's written by John C. Bogle, Bogle. He's the founder of Vanguard Mutual Fund Company. And that book, I do insist that you get it in hardback form. Don't get it on Kindle. Don't get it on, what is it, Audacity? No, on Audible.
Yeah.
Because it's filled with tables, graphs, and charts. And sometimes that just doesn't work on Kindle. Doesn't work on an audiobook at all. And you read a few pages, a section at a time, and you treat it like a textbook. And if you have no experience at all, after you read the first two books, this third book, plan on it taking months to get through, maybe even a whole year. But if you're 40 and odds are you're going to live to 80 or 90, you're going to use this information for the next 40 or 50 years. So what if it takes you 6 months to get through the book? Study it carefully. Look up the words that you don't understand. Understand each little segment as you go. If you read these 3 books and understand the bulk of the content, you will outperform 90% of all other investors. The third thing is that if you don't do all the books, the one thing that you need to know is index funds. And that's a way to keep your investment expenses phenomenally low. It keeps your taxes phenomenally low. It diversifies the risk. Learn about index funds. You can do that on a site like Investopedia. There's a lot of valuable information on a site like Investopedia or Wikipedia. Do some research if you don't want to read the books and learn about those things. So I guess save more, educate yourself, and specifically, if you don't want to do all the reading, learn about index funds.
Phil, I gotta say, those 3 things are a little heavy to put on the shoulder of some person who flippantly wants to make their life better right now in today's consumerism, attitude.
And it's funny because I get all the time. Someone will send me an email. I just had an email about reality shares.
Yeah, it's
a web-based social service kind of. What's the ones where you can donate money? If someone's kid needs a kidney, like those platforms where you can
like GoFundMe or
GoFundMe. So there's like the GoFundMe version of real estate is called reality shares.
Okay,
where you want to invest in real estate, but you only have a few $1,000s.
Yeah,
they'll connect you up to someone who wants to buy $1 million building and can't get a regular loan.
Right.
So they're able to buy a building, and you're able to help them buy a building, and you get paid back a dividend.
Right.
I did a show on a thing called Acorns, where every time you buy something, it rounds up to the next dollar and eventually pulls out $5 at a time from your checking account, and you can start investing that way. All these things are marketing gimmicks. They're cute. They're clever. You can get an app on your phone, and talking about what you just mentioned is, I'm in this go-go world. I want something I can do right now. Mm-hmm. Well, it doesn't matter how many times you save $5, once a month, once a week, once a day, maybe once a day could add up to something. It's not going to get anywhere. You have to save serious money. So if you make $30,000, you need to save $6,000 a year. $5 a month, it's not going to get there. And so people all the time will ask me, well, if I don't have $1,000, what do I do? What's the best way to invest $500? And I've kind of gotten to the point where I'll tell people, the big problem you have is not finding the best investment. The big problem you have is that you're poor. Uh-huh. It's hard to make money in the market when you have no money to put in the market. You need to figure out the money thing first. You need to either get a second job, or you need to cut your expenses, live somewhere cheaper. Don't eat out. Don't go to freaking Starbucks. Make your own coffee at home. I once had a couple called me. They're making $200,000 a year and couldn't pay off their credit card bills. Well, how big a house did you guys buy? Because housing expenses can be very high. Yeah. And they said, oh, we live in the apartment above my mom's garage. So wait. So you pay like what, $500 plus utilities? And they go, well, it's $500 flat. So your entire housing expense, including cable, water, sewer, trash, electric, heat, gas, everything, $500 a month. Yep. That's $6,000 a year. You make $200,000. Where the fuck does the rest of that money go?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't wrap my head around it. And then they both tell me that they lease cars. Like one's like a Cadillac Escalade and another one's a Grand Yukon or something like that. And I go, you guys have kids that I missed? And they go, no, we ain't got no kids. So you're driving a 4,000-pound vehicle around that gets 8 miles, 12 miles a gallon. It's a $75,000 car. You lease it for 2 years, you turn it in, you lease another brand new car. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's costing you a lot of fucking money because they're out $2,000, $2,500 a month in car payments.
So what this sounds like to me is they got started off somewhere good at some point and just kept buying the most high dollar thing that they could afford at that point before they realized, hey, there's no getting out of this.
There's no getting out of it. And with a thing like that with the cars, it'll take you 2 to 3 years to wind down the leases, because if you try to walk away, it's going to cost you even more. So you just kind of work your way out. Whereas I'm wacky extreme on the other side is that I drive a Prius. Now, you don't have to drive a Prius. I know some people think they're ugly. I think that's part of the appeal. So, but in my car, it plugs in. It's one of the newer models. I get 25 miles on electricity, which costs about $1 to $1.20 for the amount of energy you get in a gallon of gasoline. And then after that, I can only get about 60 miles per gallon. They don't hardly break down. They never hardly need repairs. The brakes last almost a lifetime for the vehicle because there's magnetic regenerative braking. It's magic. The amount of money I pay in my vehicle over the lifetime of that vehicle, over the 200, 300,000 miles that I drive it, compared to what someone's going to pay for a Yukon, is staggering. I've talked to people that get, they have to do replacement tires, and they can pay $500 to $700, $800 per tire because they're huge tires. And they have a capsule in it so it refills with air and plugs the holes in case you get a leak in the tire. A new set of tires on the Prius is $250.
Phil, it's about to be a Prius for me. I have a more expensive car that I got at a time when I could be a little frivolous with money. And let me tell you, and this is like one of the more like luxury cars. Not worth it. Not worth it if you don't have that high baller status. Recurring income every 2 weeks, every month, and you got everything else going good. I came from Hondas, Toyotas, Mazdas, that sort of thing that I could watch a video on or whatever and learn how to change the brakes, change the oil.
You're the guy fixing the car.
Yeah.
I'm never going to do that.
Yeah. And I love doing that because you know how much it cost me? I mean, I could spend $400 to $800 on brakes.
Yeah.
Or I could spend $120 and install them myself and never have to pay for that again.
Right.
And I love things like that. Anyways, I've learned my lesson, Phil, with the expensive cars. Okay, so Phil, have you heard of Dave Ramsey? Don't say anything, just say yes or no.
Yes.
Phil, for the Christian part of the audience here.
You have a Christian part?
I'm going to say a small Christian part. I mean, there is a consistent Christian audience, yes.
Yeah.
And probably not as much as the atheist, if I was to guess right now. But, and this is because we have a platform on Facebook that has a discussion of facts and faith. So we include both the communities there. And then our .com is deconverted from faith. And then our YouTube hosts all of our original content. But the Facebook is a community of both, and they'll see this. So why should our Christian friends decide that if they have Dave Ramsey or Phil Ferguson to go with the guy that's not teaching them to invest in their eternal soul and salvation in heaven, in addition to all the finances on earth, why choose you over Dave Ramsey?
Well, the interesting thing, I did an entire show on Dave Ramsey.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I don't know what number I put in the show, but probably 85% of what Dave Ramsey says, I agree with.
Okay.
But there's some really important things that I don't agree with. Now, as to your listeners, if they're a Christian listener and they're really serious about their faith, they might have a really hard time with my show. I mean, just
obviously,
I get it. It's not for everybody. Most shows, though, the financial part is the first 15 to 25 minutes, and then we'll have a topic that sometimes completely unrelated. I just had on a musician who is an Emmy-nominated musician and a rock band, and he's been doing music for 30 plus years, and we talked for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Nothing about religion, nothing about money, and because it's the Phil Ferguson show, I get to talk about whatever I want.
Yeah.
But they could do the beginning part because the ideas about money, I don't think should be tied to a philosophical or a religious or a political position.
That's it. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I want you to go on, but I want to put a flag right there because that's a great point. All right, go on.
Yep. And it's funny because I can't criticize Dave Ramsey too much for having a target market because I do.
Right. Yeah.
But it's also something that kind of freaks me the fuck out. I will have people hire me that are atheists, and they say that the reason they hired me is because I'm also an atheist. And I'm like, that's not good enough. There should be something more. So let's talk. So I utilize the same kind of psychology that he does.
Yeah.
I don't know that I like that I'm doing that, but it makes me money, so I'm kind of stuck. But
right. Yeah.
So Dave Ramsey, a couple things that I have real problems with is, first of all, this philosophy that you owe debt and you have a spiritual or a religious or a faith obligation to get out of debt no matter what. Mm-hmm. If you racked up $50,000 in credit card debt because you went shopping in Chicago, like the Magnificent Mile or Hollywood Boulevard or something like that, I'm kind of with Dave. You fucked up, pay your bills. You got all this cool stuff, pay your bills. If you have a 2-year-old child that gets leukemia and you spend $500,000 on medical bills, I don't think you should have to pay that. I think we as society should have something in place to save that child's life. And the rest of your entire life should not be chained down to pay 20 to 30% of everything you make to the hospital. That's bullshit to me. And of course, coming from Dave Ramsey, who filed bankruptcy 2, maybe 3 times before he got religion on his money program, that's very hypocritical. It was okay for him to file bankruptcy when he needed to, but it's not okay for you to file bankruptcy. So I got problems with that.
Yeah.
The other thing he does is he has classes, which from what I understand, talking to people that have gone to them, I've never gone to one of them. Maybe I will someday. That'd be kind of fun. The classes are pretty good. And I disagree a little bit philosophically with which debts you should pay off if you're in debt. But he's right. If you have debt, you got to get rid of that shit. But then I stop when you get to a point where the interest rates are really low, because if you have a debt on your home that's 4.2% and it's tax deductible, why pay that off early when I can take that money and make 8, 9, 10% in the stock market?
Explain that right there.
Yep. Let me come back to that. Remind me, please.
Okay. All right.
And then the other thing that Dave Ramsey has is he has this entire network of advisors that pay him for referrals. Mm-hmm. So you listen or go to Dave Ramsey's class, and either the person teaching the class or you contact Dave Ramsey and say, okay, I'm ready to start investing. He assigns a local advisor that kicks back money to Dave Ramsey, and they now want to sell you stuff. And Dave Ramsey strongly encourages that you buy Class A share mutual funds, load funds. Mm-hmm. So if you invest $1,000, $55, I think it's 1,000, 10% of 1,000 is 100. No, $55 right off the top goes to paying the advisor. Mm-hmm. So you have these front end load funds, and part of that money goes to Dave. So I don't like some of that stuff. So what was I going to go back into?
The deduction off of what homeowners paid to reinvest into something else. Let's break that down a little bit for our lay audience.
And let me switch it to cars. Okay. You like working on cars. The last car I bought was $35,000 car. Uh-huh. And it's Toyota Prius. We already talked about that. And Toyota was going to give me 1.9% for 5 years, 60 months. Mm. And I asked the finance person, I said, can you make it 6 years instead of 5 years? And he goes, you want 6 years? And I said, yeah, I just want to see what my options are. And he said, Toyota won't lend you money for 6 years. And I said, will somebody lend me the money for 6 years? Mm. So he goes on his computer and he comes up and he says, well, the Bank of the West, whoever they are, will do it. But it's not 1.9, it's 2.8%. And I said, I'll take it. And he goes, okay. And he reruns all the paperwork and he pulls out the 21-inch long form and puts it on the desk. And he shows me that my monthly payment is now lower. And he says, now your monthly payment's lower. Is that better? And I said, well, I don't really give a shit what the monthly payment is. He said, what? And I said, I have $35,000. I could have paid cash, not literally bringing in cash, but I could have just flat out paid for the car today. He's like, well, why did you want to get a longer loan at a higher rate? And he says, look at this right here on this form. You're going to pay $3,500 in interest on this loan over the next 6 years? And I said, yes, I'm going to pay $3,500. If I instead take the $35,000 that I could have put down on the car and invest it in the stock market, in an average year, and there never is an average year, but let's pretend we live in a fantasy world. In an average year, the stock market makes 10%. If I invest $35,000 in an average year, in 1 year, I'm going to make $3,500. You with me so far?
I'm with you in so much as it seems like you're making the same amount
in 1 year. Now, the second year, I don't make $3,500 on my investment. I make $3,500 plus another $350 because I make 10% on the $3,500 I made the first year.
Yeah.
So I make $3,850 the second year, and then like $4,000. So every year this goes up. And so over 6 years, I can make something like $24,000 on the original $35,000 I put in the market. So over that time, my $35,000 might change into $55,000. And the way I'm able to use that money, I have a fee that I have to pay to the person lending me the money for the car. And that fee over 6 years is a total of $3,500 in interest. So if I make 20 or 22,000 and then have to pay 3,500, I just generated $16,000 to $18,000 of profit on the money.
So let's get to the generation part. The generation part comes when you get that deduction paid back to you through the IRS or whatever.
The reason I switched it to a car is because there's no deduction, there's no taxes involved at all. It's me borrowing money at 2.8%, and I'm paying interest on that $35,000. But then I take that $35,000 and I make 10% per year on that money. So I'm making way more on the money that I'm paying to borrow the money to get the car. With me? I know, right? It's wacky.
You lost me at one point. And I don't want to belabor that point, especially if our audience is following along. But you're talking about where's the money being invested to? That's the part I just missed.
Yep. So the money is being invested in the U.S. stock market.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So in theory, on average, and there's never an average year, the stock market makes about 10%. And you can go look, and one of the things I talk about on my show is I call it investing skeptically, because I don't want people just to believe what I tell them. So sometimes I'll give them links you can go check. And one thing you can look at as a listener is go to Wikipedia, S&P 500. And you can see that over the last 47 years, the average stock market return has been 10.53%. I use 10 as a round number, 10.53. Will it be 10 going forward in the future? Who knows? It might be 11. It might be 7. I don't know. But as long as it's going to be more than 2.84. Now, the smart listener will say, but what if the market goes down 37% like it did in 2008? So this is not a good short-term strategy. But if you do this every time you get a car, every time you want to get a loan, if you can get a loan at 2 or 3 or 4%, and if instead you can invest that money and make 7, 8, 9, 10%, in the long run of your life, you're going to make a lot of money by borrowing money. So borrowing is a tool that you should utilize. And this is something where Dave Ramsey and I would radically disagree, because he wants you to pay off literally every single debt you have before you start investing for retirement. I know, right? You're still like, wow, wait, is it that easy?
Yeah, no, gotcha. I myself have not tapped into any long-term investments like that, other than I got lucky with real estate one time. And I bought at the bottom of the market at 2008, which for us over in Seattle kind of trickled up a little bit later, 2010, 2011. And I bought at the bottom, held on to it for a little while, but I didn't have to hold on to it for too long before it made me a lot of money. Okay, there you go. There's my financial expertise right there. I invested in real estate.
Yeah.
And I definitely understand waiting, like the get rich quick stuff.
Yeah.
And unless you are some sort of very niche, talented person, you have a specialized service to offer or information. That's just not there when it comes to financial investments. You got to do your diligence, like you were talking about with, learning for 6 months and that sort of thing. Sometimes we have that hard road ahead of us, but when you have done that, you're equipped to go further. Um, who who can people trust to advise them on their financial affairs?
I am delighted you asked that. There's one thing that is going to get you, I don't know, 80, 90% of the way there to feeling confident with your advisor. It's a very simple question.
Yeah.
You ask the advisor, are you a fiduciary?
What is that?
It's a great question. A fiduciary has a legal responsibility to do what is in your best interest.
Okay.
Kind of like when you hire an attorney, they are supposed to represent you. Now they're going to charge you and they're going to make money.
Mm.
But when they represent you, they're going to tell you and give you advice that's in your best interest. A financial advisor that is a fiduciary has the same kind of obligation. And
Gotcha.
they can serve time in jail if it's shown that they don't behave in that way. So it's very important for them to actually do what's correct. Now, you can have a genuine, honest difference of opinion how that's done, and your money can still go down a lot in the short term if it's all in the stock market, but the person's doing what they think is best. Now, if you go and hire, you meet somebody who happens to sell annuities or life insurance, and let's say you have $100,000, you could buy an annuity and they might get a 15% commission and make $15,000 selling you the $100,000 annuity. They may know, they may not even know, because their job is not to know or understand what they're selling. Their job is to sell it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So if they can sell a $100,000 annuity and get paid $15,000, that's where their interest, that's where their, the interest in talking to you and the interest in working with you kind of ends because they got paid. Now they're done. But that annuity might make you 2 or 3% per year on average for the next 30 years. Whereas in the stock market, it could have made 10. Or you can have half stocks and half bonds and make 7. But instead you're making 2. And you think that, okay, 2 is obviously a lot smaller than 10. The ending result is staggering. I'll give you an example. There's a thing called the rule of 72s. You heard of it before?
No, but I'm interested.
Okay. The rule of 72 is a convenient shortcut to tell you how quickly your money can double.
Okay.
If you make 1% a year, your money will double in about 72 years.
Okay.
This is not precise, but it's in the ballpark. If you make 2% a year, it'll take about 36 years. If you make 7 times 10 is 70. 7% will double in about 10 years. 10% will double in about 7 years. Now, obviously, if you make 72% in 1 year, your money didn't double in 1 year. So it breaks down at the extremes. But it's a handy guide. So if you invest in an annuity, and let's say you get a good one that makes 3%, that means 3%, 72, 24. Yeah, it's going to take 24 years for your money to double. So your 100,000 turns into 200,000 over 24 years. If you put it in the stock market and make 10%, it'll double in 7 years. So your 100,000 turns into 200,000 in 7 years. In 14 years, your 200,000 turns into 400,000.
Oh, wow.
In 21 years, your 400,000 turns into 800,000. So in 21 years, you could have $800,000, or in 24 years, you could have $200,000. So that difference between 3% and 10% is only 7 points. But over the next 20 plus years, the ending result is $600,000. That's a big fucking deal.
That is, and the difference then could be in the starting point, and the starting point could include who you're picking as a financial advisor,
Right.
Somebody that's, has an interest of selling you something, or a fiduciary,
Right.
like what you just explained.
And so what you do is you meet with somebody or you talk to them on the phone, you say, are you a fiduciary? If they are, their answer is likely going to be yes. Yes. If they give you anything other than a straight up yes, I think the answer is no.
Yeah.
So happy they go, well, fiduciary is usually reserved for someone who's managing a trust, for someone who's old or a kid or something like that. Bullshit. Okay. Or if they say, well, depends on the investment, because there's some investments where we are the fiduciary. Okay. Which means for some investments, we're not the fiduciary.
Right.
And so it would be like hiring an attorney that sometimes represents you, and sometimes they drop a dime and they call the police and tell them that you told them something you weren't supposed to tell them, and they turn you in. Well, then they don't work for you. They either work for you all the time or they don't. And it's a staggering thing in the United States, because I think every country in Europe, every modern country in Europe, the financial advisors in every one of those countries has to be a fiduciary all the time. I have a friend who is in Italy, and he and I have had this conversation. He's like, well, what's with this in the United States where someone can sell you stuff and not be your fiduciary? And the problem is the public doesn't know the difference. It's like, for example, I love these car analogies. If you go to the Ford dealership and you ask the salesman at the Ford dealership, what's better, a Ford truck or a Chevy truck? I mean, in truck country, this is a big fucking deal. But you go to the Ford dealership and you ask that guy, what's better, Ford or Chevy? What's he going to tell you?
If you go to the Ford, they're saying Ford.
Yeah, of course. And you know that, right? That's not fucking rocket science. You know that. But did you know when you go to someone like Edward Jones that they have a contractual arrangement to sell or recommend only a handful of mutual fund companies? If they suggest that you put some of your money in Vanguard, they may not get paid at all. If they suggest you put your money in Fidelity or Schwab's new low-cost index funds, they may not get paid at all. So their advice is already conflicted from the very beginning, because their pay is dependent on what they recommend. A fiduciary advisor is almost always, and this is another key word, is you want to find a financial advisor that is fee only, not fee-based, fee only. It's not a legally controlled word, so it's still slippery. Fiduciary is a legally controlled word, but fee only means that the only way they get paid is by you, the person that's paying them.
Gotcha.
There's endless amounts of kickbacks, commissions, fees, vacation packages, tickets to the Super Bowl, vacation islands, all that stuff where these people sell things. So that, again, changes their motivation. They might see something and go, I could put them in this better thing, but I only need one more person to buy this thing over here. And my wife and I get 2 weeks in Hawaii.
So that's the person we don't want on your side.
Yeah, what are they going to do? I mean, maybe they're not tempted by it, but somebody is. That's why they offer it. If it didn't have value for the company giving away the gifts, they wouldn't give away the gifts.
I got to say, if there's an interest over here or something that is an incentive for me ever to pick it, and then I got a client over here that I got to service, my interest is going to be divided. It doesn't matter what you think. Even if it's negligible, it's divided. And if the client knew about it, they might think that there's an ethical issue going on, which seems obvious that there is.
Popped in my head. I don't know if I'll take too much time. A fun story I can share with you about someone buying a stock.
Yeah.
And I think it links into your show pretty well. So a friend of the family came over to the house one day. This is several years ago. And she said, Phil, I followed your advice. My first response is, oh, shit. They probably didn't follow my advice because they didn't fucking talk to me about it. So I know I'm in trouble already because they're giving me credit for something and I'm terrified that they misunderstood or did something wrong.
Yeah.
And then she says, I bought a stock. And I said, you bought a stock? And she goes, well, not one share, but a bunch of shares of one company. And so first of all, one of my rules is never put more than 5% of your investment in any one given stock.
Yeah.
Okay. So she completely ignored a very, very basic entry-level rule of investing.
Yeah.
And you bought a stock. Okay. Well, what does this stock do? What does this company do? I don't really know. I go, what do you mean you don't really know? Well, this guy said I should buy it. Well, why did he say you should buy it? He said in 12 months, it's going to double. How the fuck does he know that? I mean, if he knew that, why isn't he buying it? If he can double his money in 12 months, why is he wasting his time getting commissions off your shit? You know what? She had $5,000. It's the only money she had, $5,000. She put all of it in this one stock. So she tells me the name of the company and I look it up. And I've done this in PowerPoint, and thankfully I did screenshots of this company's webpage because it doesn't exist anymore. I know you're surprised, right? But they were working on a proprietary technology to float weather balloons up into the atmosphere to collect the static electric charge differential between the upper atmosphere and the ground. And they thought they could power entire cities doing this.
Gotcha. All right.
And I asked her, I said, do you know when there's the most static electricity in the upper atmosphere? She's like, no, when? I go, it's called thunderstorms. You know what thunderstorms do to weather balloons? They shred them and they fall to the earth. And if you take a weather balloon and you put it up 5 miles and you tether it with a carbon fiber cable, what happens to that cable when the weather balloon gets shredded? It drops a 5-mile freaking long cable. Where's that going to land? I mean, if that hits somebody at terminal velocity, it's going to split you in two. Right. No one's going to do this. This is obscenely stupid. And, we're looking at the statistics for the website. And she goes, I see all these numbers I don't understand. I was like, you don't understand the company. You don't understand what it does. You don't understand these numbers. You don't understand anything. And so she bought something she doesn't understand from someone she barely knows. And I said, here's what you need to do. You need to go back to this broker. Oh, by the way, it's what's called a penny stock. Did you see Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. And penny stocks, by law, the commission can be no greater than 50%.
Gotcha.
So she bought $5,000 in stock in this one bullshit company. The most the salesperson could make in commission is $2,500, half of her money. That could be his commission.
Yeah.
That's the limit by law. It can't be bigger than that. It might be smaller. It might only be 30%. But I'm assuming how this was set up, he got 50%. Mm-hmm. And if she wanted to sell the stock, the very day she bought it for 50 cents a share, she could only sell it for 20 cents a share the next day. So I said, you go back to this advisor and you say, you know what? I figured out what you did. You sold me something that's bullshit. I want my $5,000 back. And she said, well, what would he say? And I said, he's going to say, look, sweetie pie, that's not how this stuff works. You got to let it go for a while. This is going to be a big winner. You don't want the money back.
I already see where this is going.
Yeah. And then I said, so then what you say is that's fucking bullshit. There's a 3-day rule where I can get my money back. Give me my motherfucking money back, motherfucker, or get your boss over here. And she's like, oh, Phil, I can't talk like that. And I go, I'll go with you. I'm excited. I'll go in there and we'll be nice to start with, and then we'll ramp it up. And then I'll say, well, here's the next thing. You get your boss over here to cut us a check for $5,000, or when we leave here, we're going to drive down to Springfield, Illinois, and file a formal complaint with the Securities and Exchange Department of the state of Illinois. What do you guys think about that? And this guy's manager is going to go, yeah, we'll give you a check for $5,000, because they don't want that complaint. They don't want that complaint a lot. And what's going to happen is the company is going to take those stocks, have to unload them on somebody else, and about $2,500 of it comes from the guy's commission. So the manager doesn't give a shit because he's only out $2,500. This guy's out $2,500, and they just sell the stock to somebody else. And she's like, well, I can't do that. And I go, I'll go with you. I told you I'll go with you. And she goes, no, I wouldn't want to ruin his reputation because he's a member of my church. And it just so happened she was going through the middle of a divorce, and it turns out that her husband was stealing money from his employer and using it on cocaine and hookers. I could not make this shit up, right?
Yeah.
And she didn't want to divorce him because divorce is not allowed in the church.
Right.
And so he was like a big stone around her neck, just taking her down deeper and deeper. And he was already in jail. And the only reason she had $5,000 is she stopped paying the mortgage on my advice. Stop paying the mortgage. They're taking the house anyway. Anything you pay the mortgage now just poof, disappears. So she'd saved up $5,000 to put down the first month and a deposit on an apartment to take her and her 4 kids to move out.
This is a horrible situation.
Yeah, the guy in the church knew the whole story and took her $5,000.
Woo! Business as usual.
Yeah, business as usual. Yeah, who cares? Who cares what happens? I had an inspector. From time to time, the government audits me and comes in and checks the books and looks at the papers and everything. And the guy was telling me that he ran into this broker who was making $800,000 a year from his clients.
Oh, wow.
I don't know about you, but that sounds like a lot of fucking money. Yeah. That's your income per year, $800,000.
Yeah.
He decided it wasn't enough and started stealing from him.
What do they say about power?
Absolute power corrupts absolutely kind of thing. But it's a staggering thing that and there's too much of this in the country. I think I'll get off a political rant here. Sorry. That It doesn't matter how much you make, you have to make more. It doesn't matter that all your needs are met, you have to make more. It doesn't matter if people around you are starving or hungry or being oppressed, you have to make more. And it blows my freaking mind. When did we get to this point? I mean, we've always had people that wanted to do that, but it seems to be a growing number of people. And what's surprising me all the way back to Joe the plumber. I don't know if you remember Joe the plumber in politics, but this guy's like, he went up and he would campaign with Sarah Palin and John McCain.
Gotcha.
And he was just Joe the plumber. You know, he's just a small time guy getting the job done. And he would go on stage and promote big tax cuts to the rich people because someday he'd be rich too. And you want to go, Joe, dude, the odds that you're going to make a couple $1 million a year being a fucking plumber is unlikely. Now, there's some plumbers that make a big business and corner the market in their city and they hire dozens of people and have trucks and a big brand name. Most plumbers, just a guy. And he can make $100,000 a year with a plumber license. It's a great job. It's a noble and honorable job. And when I need plumbing done, I'm fucking glad they're there. And I'll pay them to fix my shit. Literally. But for him to think that he's going to someday be the guy making millions of dollars, odds are it's just not going to happen. And so it's got this mindset that he's okay with people making millions of dollars paying taxes. Most really rich people make their money off stocks, and they make it off stock growth, and they pay capital gains tax rates of 20%. Whereas someone who's working making 100,000 might pay 22, 24, 28, 32, 34%. That's with the new lower rates, by the way. And then your state income tax rate. So you might pay 30 to 40% taxes on your income. The guy who makes $4 million a year pays 20%. It's crazy.
Well, it sounds like a good workaround.
The nice gig if you can get it. I mean, but you know, you got to struggle and scrap your way up there. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just talk all night. You let me go. It's going to be dangerous.
I'd love to have you on in the future. I think finance is a great thing, especially to introduce to the atheist community persons who. So my audience is mostly those who have dealt with deconversion. So they're coming from a financial mindset of give it all back to God. And some education in this area is much needed. And speaking of that,
well, I got real lucky. 8 months ago, I did a 2-hour-long show on Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay.
And I put the show out 4 days after Bitcoin hit $20,000 a unit, and it's now like $6,000 or $7,000 a unit.
Yeah.
And I basically sell. It's a scam. It's bullshit. It cannot succeed. And I went through all the mathematics of why Bitcoin can't, and I'm going to get hate mail again from your show. It cannot work mathematically, energy-wise, electronics-wise. Bitcoin is doomed. It cannot succeed. And that's a pretty bold statement. And maybe I'm risking my entire advising career, but I got real lucky that I first declared that when it was 20,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I had some friends interested in that at the time. And I seen that go up. I have a guy that lives down the street here who would show me all those stats and everything. And then I noticed it as it got that high. And then I watched it fall.
Well, one of the keys for me, it's kind of a joke, but it really happened, is that when the cashier at the Piggly Wiggly asks me about Bitcoin, you know the bubble's going to have to burst because you're running out of, it's called the greater fool philosophy, like tulip bulbs or Bitcoin. As long as there's always another sucker to pay even more than you paid, you can sell it and make money. It doesn't have to be rational. But when you run out of suckers, I mean, when you get to the cashier at the Piggly Wiggly, how much money can they invest in Bitcoin? And all of a sudden the demand dries up, and then anything can happen to make the price collapse. And that's kind of what happened.
I see that. Yeah, I follow that. That's what an interesting concept. Before we finish here.
Yes, sir.
One last question. What is one thing that everybody can do right now to improve their financial situation? What is one thing?
Increase your income and or cut your expenses. It's just simple math. When I do talks, I have a phrase, I call it, I teach people how to money.
Yeah.
And step one, you got to have some fucking money.
Yeah.
2, invest it smart. 3 is time. mostly I focus on investing it smart because people that have big portfolios pay me better than people that have little teeny portfolios. Right. So I'm a greedy pig too. I got to get paid. The time part I can't really affect, but the saving part, you got to have money. And I do get the emails and the phone calls of someone that says, I'm a single mom and I've got 3 kids and I'm 30 years old and I'm working 2 jobs and I can barely pay my bills. How do I save money? I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Boy, when someone figures that out, let me know. I'll share it on my show for free. Yeah. Ideally, you can work a second job. You can learn a skill when you're working your first job, then you work at night. Drives me crazy when someone says, there's the people that are working 2 or 3 jobs. It's hard. But I also run into people that are making very little pay, what I consider very little pay, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. They're complaining about it constantly. They want to do something else with their lives. But as soon as they come home, they sit down and they watch TV. They watch sports, or they watch soap operas, or they watch what do they call these fake TV shows? Where they boat people off islands and crap. And on the weekends, they do all these things. Well, you can go to night school. You can learn a little bit of computer code, or you can learn how to be a nurse, or you can learn a lot of different things. You need to have a skill. You need to have a skill that someone's going to pay you for. If the best skill you have is working in the mall, you're never really going to get much above minimum wage because there's a lot of people that have that skill. Right. It's not without value. It just doesn't have a high value. So if you can find something that you can get a certification in, a license in, where you're in a limited club, that can change everything. There's some code writing that if you learn a couple of programs and pass them, and it might take you 6 to 9 months of studying, and it's hard because you're at your job full time and then all your free time, but you may be able to switch careers and go from 30,000 to 80,000 because you have a couple licenses that took you 6 months of nights and weekends to study. Poof, you change your life. Not everybody has the time. I get it. But creating that spread between income and expenses is the hugest thing. And again, even if you have a nice job and you get unemployed, fired, terminated, whatever words you want to use, you've had time to build up a safety so that you don't have this catastrophic events, because there's a lot of people that if their employer comes and says, you're unemployed today, by next Friday, they're done. Because they're living literally Friday to Friday to Friday to Friday to Friday. And if they miss one Friday, they're broke, and now they're a month or 2 away from getting evicted from their apartment. If they've got family or friends, they can move, but not everybody has that either. So you don't want to be in that situation. So, boy, if I could do it over in my 20s, I would try to live on like half of what I make. It's so easy to say because people will tell me, they go, Phil, that's not easy. And I go, never said it was easy. But if you can start building up assets, then you can start investing, and that can really make a difference.
Thanks, Phil, for all the advice and the talk and everything that you've endorsed or made reference to here. I'll make sure to put that in the description. From what I understood from the last thing you said is spend less than you make.
Spend less than you make. Yeah, that's either make more or spend less, or both.
Yeah, or both.
I mean, it's so weird for me because ever since I was like 16, up until 5 years ago, I never had only one job. Even when I got married, even when I had kids, I DJ'd weddings. My wife had a full-time job and then was a waitress. We struggled very, very hard for many years to make and try to save money. And now it's nice. Now I'm going to Italy for a month. And that's pretty fucking cool.
That is.
That is.
All right. Well, with that said, everybody for joining in. If you're on right now, you want to support content or information like what Phil has given us today, or Fully Deconverted and what we offer over on the Facebook and YouTube and all those places, a discussion on facts and faith, and anything religious and secular values, go ahead and hit the thumbs up right now. Support the content. Thank you very much, by the way. And that's it. That wraps our show. Phil, tell everybody goodbye.
Ciao.